Hey guys, tonight we dive into a story older than cities, older than kings, older even than the idea of time itself. You probably won't survive this without feeling slightly dizzy, because we're starting at the very beginning when there was nothing, absolutely nothing. No land, no sky, no humans, not even cows to stare at your existential crisis, just chaos. You trudge through this primordial soup with me, though thankfully it's metaphorical, because stepping into the literal version sounds like a cold, sticky mistake. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, post your location and local time mile wait. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine a vast emptiness called chaos, the Greek notion of the yawning void, stretching endlessly in every direction. You float there, no horizon, no floor, just potential waiting for a reason to wake up. From this swirling nothingness, the first primordial beings slowly emerge, like reluctant roommates who've just discovered each other. Gaia, the earth, stretches her limbs into existence, forming mountains, valleys, and fertile plains. Then comes Tartarus, a gloomy underworld abyss that is both part of the earth and far beneath it, mostly unpleasant, but historically necessary for a good story. Next, Eros, the spark of desire, drifts into the scene because, apparently, even in nothingness, Lavore, at least attraction is inevitable. And finally, Nyx, the enigmatic night, drapes her dark veil across the cosmos, softly murmuring secrets we'll probably never fully understand. Historians still argue whether these beings were ever worshipped in the sense we think of religion, or if they were just narrative placeholders for early humans trying to make sense of the void. As you trudge through this mythic darkness, imagine the air, thick with the smell of fresh creation. If creation had a smell, maybe damp clay, a hint of ozone, and a dash of cosmic confusion. Gaia shakes herself awake, and from her, the mountains groan, rivers murmur, and forests stretch. You might step on a tiny nymph or two if you're not careful. Don't worry, they're mostly shy and not particularly vengeful. In one particularly odd corner of the myth, Uranus, the sky, rises as Gaia's partner, draping himself over her like an overenthusiastic blanket. Together, they produce the first generation of titans, colossal beings whose names roll off the tongue with the weight of mountains. Oceanus, Hyperion, Cous. Try saying that after a few minutes of narration, and you'll understand why the ancients preferred storytelling over texting. But even at this early stage, things are already messy. Uranus hates some of his own children and stuffs them away inside Gaia's womb, clearly the first recorded example of parental favoritism causing global consequences. And yet, from this cruelty and conflict, the universe becomes structured. Order emerges from chaos. You watch the titans grow, stretch, and scheme, feeling like a spectator at a cosmic theater where the actors Dantino, they being watched. Among the quieter whispers, in the shadows hints of minor deities slip in. Pontus, the mysterious sea, whispers to Gaia about hidden depths, while Nyx giggles softly in a corner, her laughter threading through time still influencing poets thousands of years later. Historians still argue whether chaos should be taken literally or figuratively, but for our purposes, think of it as the ultimate blank canvas. You can almost feel the weight of potential pressing against your eyelids as night slowly blends with day. And somewhere in that void, the first flickers of narrative spark to life, as though the universe is already testing your attention span. Maybe you rub your eyes, maybe you sigh, but the story keeps moving. You trudge alongside the early cosmos, where the air hums faintly with possibilities and very subtle threats. Just imagine stepping on a cloud. By mistake it's soft, but incredibly disorienting. By the end of these first chaotic moments, you realize that nothingness isn't boring, it's full of potential, tension, and odd little family dramas that will echo through every myth yet to come. Gaia's mountains, Tartarus depths, Nyx's endless night, and Eros' unpredictable desire all wait patiently, like books on a dusty shelf, ready for you to knock over in the most inconvenient way. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you might start wondering if you should be taking notes. But the truth is, nothing about this beginning makes sense in a tidy way. And yet, you don't mind, because it's sleepy, it's dreamy, and it's the perfect environment for your imagination to stretch into the shape of myths you'll follow for the next several hours. Oddly enough, even in this sleepy void, you notice tiny sparks of narrative rebellion. Gaia is murmuring about vengeance on Uranus, and the seeds of cosmic drama are already planted. You might catch a glimpse of Nyx's mischievous grin, wondering whether she knows what she's started. And in that very moment, the primordial chaos stops being just background noise. It becomes the stage, the orchestra, and the gentle, lulling whisper of a story that will keep you company long after your eyelids start to droop. Quirky tidbit: some ancient poets described chaos not as emptiness, but as a dark, sticky, almost oatmeal-like substance perfect for slipping on if you weren't paying attention. Mainstream fact: Greeks did consider Gaia, literally, the mother of everything, including mountains, rivers, and the Titan. And scholars still debate whether these early myths were ever religion or simply storytelling for sleepy villagers who had too much time at night. So, as you drift a little closer to sleep, imagine floating through the grayish gold haze of prehistory, surrounded by the first whispers of gods, monsters, and unformed destinies. The universe is still yawning, stretching, and about to start a very long, very tangled family saga. Remember that subtle chaos. It's the lullaby that will carry you forward. As the primordial haze slowly fades behind you, you find yourself tripping over the massive shadows of the Titans, the first true rulers of the cosmos before the Olympians ever dreamed of taking a throne. You probably won't notice at first, because these beings are so vast that even their sighs ripple through the air like faint earthquakes. Oceanus, the god of the far-reaching river encircling the world, meanders lazily, spilling droplets that form the first ocean. Hyperion, the titan of light, stretches and yawns, casting faint glimmers across jagged mountains and nascent rivers. You trudge carefully between them, aware that one careless step could land you in a foot-sized crater, or worse, being mistaken for an ant. Historians still argue whether the Titans were ever meant to be worshipped individually or simply represented forces of nature. The Greeks couldn't otherwise explain. Cronus, the youngest Titan, stands out immediately, pacing like a worried parent with a history of paranoia. You might wrinkle your nose at the faint scent of metal and dust that seems to cling to him, which is a detail no one really talks about, but apparently comes from centuries-old interpretations of cosmic authority. Cronus has his hands full because he's already plotting against his own father, Uranus. There's a whispered, almost ridiculous, where Gaia secretly provides Cronus with a sickle made of flint, which is just sharp enough to be terrifying. You watch from a safe distance as he lunges into a swift, decisive act of rebellion, severing Uranus' connection to the Earth. The Titan's rule is chaotic, but strangely orderly, like a messy dorm room where everyone obeys rules only half the time. You trudge past Zeus and Phoebe, the thinkers, who debate endlessly about intelligence and the stars. Imagine two giants arguing quietly about astronomy while tossing faintly glowing rocks back and forth. Historians still argue whether these titans actually represented abstract concepts, or if the Greeks just liked dramatic family stories with endless power struggles. Mnemosyne, the titan of memory, drifts by, quietly cataloging every minor quarrel, which is helpful if you enjoy keeping mental notes for bedtime storytelling. You pause to notice that even in this surreal family, domestic squabbles are relatable. Cronus' fear of prophecy, for example, makes him swallow his own children, a decision that would make any modern parent cringe. You almost snicker, but quickly remind yourself it's not polite to mock divine parental decisions, even if they are deeply misguided. Rhea, Cronus' partner, moves silently along the jagged cliffs, planning her own clever interventions. You trudge alongside her thoughts and can almost feel the tension in the air as she begins to hatch a rescue plan for her children. The Titans, though seemingly eternal and unbothered by time, are full of quirks. Oceanus never stops moving his river. Hyperion constantly glares at the horizon, and Cronus' paranoia radiates like heat from an invisible sun. Quirky tidbit: some ancient fragments suggest that the Titans had secret hobbies, like collecting rare stones or whispering to mountains, which sounds suspiciously like early mythic procrastination. Mainstream fact: the Titans were indeed considered the first generation of divine rulers, overthrown later by their own offspring. You notice the tension thickening as Cronus' paranoia peaks. He doesn't yet know about the prophecy that one of his children will overthrow him. You, floating slightly above the chaos, can see the threads of fate weaving quietly through time. Historians still argue whether the prophecy was a genuine part of Greek lore from the beginning, or if it was a later storytelling addition meant to justify Zeus' eventual rise. Hyperion yawns, his rays brushing over mountains and rivers, and for a brief moment, the cosmos feels calm. Though you know this peace won't last. Every Titan has a personality you can almost feel brushing past your skin. Oceanus, patience; Cous, curiosity; Cronus, paranoia; and Rhea's cunning, which sets the stage for centuries of drama. You trudge carefully, noticing subtle cosmic events, the first whispers of storms, the first tremors of earthquakes, and even the faint hum of time ticking forward. This is a universe learning to coordinate itself, and the Titans are the clumsy, enormous tutors. You might stumble over a wayward cloud of stardust, or slip on a patch of primordial ice, but somehow you keep walking, because the story demands it. A quirky tidbit floats by. In some rare myths, the Titans supposedly played dice with mountains and rivers, betting entire regions for fun, which is maybe why Greek mythology never became a quiet bedtime affair until someone decided to write it down carefully. And yet, the essential fact remains: the Titans ruled before the Olympians, their power vast but inevitably doomed. Historians still argue whether these colossal figures were ever considered gods, in the same way Zeus and Hera would be later. As you drift further into this mythic landscape, imagine the sounds of giant footsteps mingling with the distant roar of unseen rivers, the flicker of light across primordial peaks, and the faint rustle of leaves that haven't yet learned how to exist properly. The Titan's reign feels long and eternal, yet every subtle whisper, every tiny betrayal, hints that this order is fragile. You trudge past Hyperion's light, Oceanus' slow swirl, and Cronus' restless pacing, feeling as though you're walking alongside history itself, watching the universe take its first dramatic breaths. By the time you start to relax into this slow, cosmic rhythm, you realize the Titans are not just background, they are the very heartbeat of creation, flawed, massive, and entirely compelling. You drift forward, still brushing stardust off your shoulders, and before long you find yourself standing at the edge of one of the strangest parenting decisions in mythic history: Cronus and his unmistakably terrible habit of swallowing his own children. You trudge cautiously toward the Titan's looming figure, fully aware that this is the kind of family behavior that would make even a soap opera producer say, "Okay, that's a bit much." Cronus paces, muttering under his breath about prophecies, destiny, and the general inconvenience of being overthrown. You can almost hear his paranoia radiating in small crackles of cosmic energy around his fingertips. If you lean in just a little, careful not to get caught in the draft, you'll notice the strange mixture of fear and pride on his face when each new child is born. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon all swallowed whole, one by one. It's not exactly a commendable daycare method, but apparently Cronus believes it's the only way to dodge fate. Historians still argue whether this swallowing was meant literally in the myth or symbolically, representing time, Cronus' Roman counterpart, Saturn consuming everything it creates. Either way, the children end up suspended inside him like a living time capsule, probably exchanging awkward greetings and wondering why their father is like this. Rhea, their mother, is quietly losing patience. You can almost feel her frustration vibrating in the air as she watches yet another newborn vanish into Cronus' stomach with a cosmic gulp. You trudge beside her as she wanders through ancient forests, confiding her fears to Gaia, her mother. The forest around you seems to hum with sympathy, all moss, shadows, and soft earth beneath your steps, like the world itself is listening. Gaia, who never misses a chance to meddle in cosmic affairs, suggests a plan. Rhea's eyes gleam, and you feel that spark of rebellion warming the air. Soon, baby Zeus arrives. Instead of letting Cronus swallow him, Rhea wraps a stone in cloth, an ancient diversion trick that somehow works, because Cronus doesn't exactly inspect his meals. You watch him gulp the rock with full confidence, muttering something about yet another potential usurper handled, while Rhea quietly hustles the real infant away. You trudge alongside her through thick mist and across rugged cliffs until you reach Crete, where nymphs cradle baby Zeus and feed him goat's milk. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some versions say the goat, Amalthea, was so beloved that Zeus later turned her horn into the cornucopia horn of plenty, which feels like the first cosmic thank you gift ever recorded. Meanwhile, to keep Zeus' cries from reaching Cronus' ears, a band of armored youths called the Curetes dance wildly, clashing their shields and spears in rhythmic, thunderous beats. You can almost feel the vibrations in your chest as they stomp around like ancient noise-canceling headphones. Historians still argue whether these guardians were actual cult figures or symbolic protectors invented by storytellers to explain how Zeus survived. Time passes, though in myths, time always behaves strangely. Zeus grows in secret, nurtured by the warm winds of Crete, the ancient caves echoing with protective songs. You trudge through these echoing caverns, feeling the cool stone, the faint scent of moss, and the soft drip of sacred springs around you. Zeus is already showing signs of his future temper. Tiny sparks of lightning flicker at his fingertips when he's upset, though nothing large enough yet to disrupt your quiet stroll. Eventually, the moment comes when Zeus decides enough is enough. He sets out to challenge Cronus. Depending on the mythic version you follow, historians still argue which account is correct. Either Metis, a clever titaness, brews a potion to force Cronus to vomit up his children, or Zeus confronts him directly. In the version unfolding around you, you trudge beside Metis as she mixes herbs, honey, and something that smells suspiciously like fermented root. She hands the concoction to Zeus, who, with a dramatic flourish, offers it to Cronus under the guise of a peace offering. Cronus drinks it. The ground shakes, his knees buckle, and one by one, out come the fully grown Olympian siblings, probably irritated but grateful to stretch their limbs. Hera brushes off cosmic dust, Poseidon wipes slime from his beard, and Hades mutters something about needing a long nap. You stand back, trying not to look too judgmental as Cronus, now very uncomfortable, collapses in surprise. The Olympians gather, exchanging determined glances. This family reunion is not the warm, fuzzy kind. That's the kind that leads to a 10-year war. But for now, the focus remains on the strange chain of events that began with fear, swallowing, and a very clever rot. A quirky debate floats through your mind. Some fringe retellings claim Cronus swallowed not babies but symbolic powers, meaning the children never physically sat in his stomach. But since you're currently tripping over a puddle of cosmic vomit, it's safe to stick with the literal version. The air feels heavy with anticipation. Rhea lingers nearby, relieved yet preparing for the conflict ahead. You trudge on, feeling the universe shift slightly as destiny realigns itself. Swallowed children, secret caves, clever tricks. This, you realize, is the beginning of the end for Titan rule. The story marches forward, and so do you, stepping carefully over the remnants of Cronus' delusions, guided by the faint hum of prophecy that has always been circling in the air like a sleepy lullaby. You step carefully over the cracked stones beneath your feet, feeling the tension in the air tighten like an invisible cord. The cosmos itself seems to hold a slow breath as the newly freed Olympians gather their strength. The great conflict later remembered as the Titanomachy is about to unfold. You trudge beside Zeus as he surveys the landscape, every gust of wind carrying the faint smell of storm clouds, old grudges, and pending divine paperwork. This isn't just a battle. It's a family argument turned up to cosmic volume. The Titans, older and heavier, with centuries of authority, line up on one side. Cronus, still shaky from his forced evacuation of his children, tries to stand tall. Around him, the elder Titans rumble with the confidence of beings accustomed to ruling. On the other side, the young and fiery Olympians gather, each buzzing with their own untested power. Zeus, lightning crackling subtly at the corners of his palms. Poseidon, gripping a makeshift trident carved from ancient coral. Hades, quiet but intense, shadows clinging to him like loyal pets. Historians still argue whether the Olympians were imagined as youthful rebels from the very beginning, or whether that characterization evolved later to make the myth feel more dramatic. You trudge forward, dodging a rolling boulder, tossed casually by one of the Titans during warm-up. The sky darkens, not with rain, but with anticipation though the heavens themselves aren't sure who to root for. A quirky tidbit flashes through your mind. Some ancient poets swore that the Titanomachy lasted exactly 10 years because divine beings needed 1 year to warm up, 8 years to actually fight, and 1 year to argue over cleanup. No mainstream scholar accepts this, but you can't deny it fits the chaotic family energy happening around you. What tips the balance is the decision that Zeus makes next. He climbs deep into the earth, and you trudge behind him, feeling the temperature cool the further you descend. In the pitch-black depths of Tartarus, Zeus seeks out the Cyclopist, the one-eyed master smithsand, the Hecatonchirist, the hundred-handed giants, whose names you definitely mispronounce during a quiz. These ancient beings had been imprisoned by Cronus long ago, shoved into the abyss for being unsightly and extra inconvenient. You can almost feel their resentment humming like static electricity as Zeus releases them. Historians still argue whether the Cyclopes' forging of Zeus' thunderbolts was part of the oldest version of the myth or added later to justify his signature weapon. The Cyclopes, grateful and slightly dramatic, immediately present Zeus with 3 legendary gifts: thunder, lightning, and the thunderbolted triple combo worthy of any fantasy game loadout. They also give Hades a helmet of invisibility and Poseidon a trident so sharp it could skewer an entire mountain range if it felt petty. A quirky detail: some fringe sources claim the Cyclopes handed out these weapons while arguing over who had the better beard. You don't see any beards here, but you do catch them comparing eyebrow lengths. Armed and ready, the Olympians storm the surface again. The battle erupts in a thunderous roar that rattles the edges of reality. You trudge cautiously along the sidelines, watching mountains shake like nervous dogs. Zeus hurls a bolt so bright that it temporarily wipes out your ability to blink. Poseidon smashes his trident into the earth, splitting landscapes like someone slicing cake with unnecessary enthusiasm. Hades slips in and out of shadows, appearing behind Titans and tapping them on the shoulder before disappearing. Classic Big Brother mischief. On the Titan side, Zeus flings burning stars. Oceanus summons tidal waves the size of cities, and Hyperion emits blinding streaks of primordial light. You can feel every tremor under your feet, like walking across a sleeping giant's ribcage. A mainstream fact anchors you. The Titanomachy was indeed described as shaking the very foundations of the world. With mountains crashing and seas boiling, some ancient poets even insisted the sky nearly collapsed. As the battle rages, you notice that the hundred-handed giants play a major role. They hurl boulders the size of islands with casual ease, surprising even themselves with how good it feels to finally stretch their arms. Historians still argue whether the Hecatonchires represent natural disasters like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Given their immense destructive abilities, you simply trudge away from their landing spots, trying not to become a mythic pancake. There's a moment mid-battle when you catch sight of Rhea, standing quietly on a distant ridge. Her expression blends relief with worry, mother watching her children fight the war she unintentionally set off. You can almost feel the emotional weight pressing through the wind. The climax arrives as Zeus rises above the chaos, the clouds gathering around him like loyal shepherd dogs. He calls down a storm so intense it seems to rip through every layer of existence. Lightning, brighter than anything yet seen, arcs through the sky, slamming into titan after titan. Mountains crumble, rivers evaporate, the air itself crackles. When the dust settles, the titans lie defeated, exhausted, overwhelmed, and probably reconsidering some life choices. Zeus orders them bound in chains crafted by the Cyclopes and cast deep into Tartarus, a prison so dark it feels like standing inside a closed eyelid. You trudge to the edge of the pit, peering down into the swirling void. A quirky tidbit: some fringe retellings claim the Titans held weekly meetings down there, discussing escape plans and complaining about the lack of ergonomic seating. Completely unverified, but entertaining. The Olympians stand victorious. The world feels lighter, as though breathing freely for the first time. And you, still trudging forward, sense the shift in cosmic balance. A new era is about to begin, one shaped not by titans, but by the next generation of gods, full of ambition, beauty, and drama, worthy of late-night storytelling. You move forward through the settling dust of the Titanomachi, the air still humming faintly with leftover lightning and a few lingering sparks that drift lazily like tired fireflies. The world feels newly washed, draw open, and strangely optimistic. Like someone just rebooted the universe and forgot to reinstall the chaos for a minute. You trudge through this fresh terrain, feeling the soft debris crunch beneath your steps. And ahead of you rises the silhouette of a mountain, so tall it seems to poke the sky just to see what will happen. Mount Olympus, home of the soon-to-be rulers of everything. Zeus stands at the peak, surveying the cosmos with that mix of confidence and mild dramatic flair he'll never outgrow. You can almost hear him thinking, this view needs a throne. On either side stand his brothers Poseidon, running his fingers along the haft of his trident like someone polishing a prized gaming controller, and Hades watching silently, shadows coiling around him as though they've been waiting for a leader to follow. Historians still argue whether the division of realms was predetermined by cosmic law or literally decided by drawing lots, which is honestly hilarious considering the stakes. Imagine 3 divine siblings rolling dice for global domination. But that's exactly what happens around you. A simple jar is set down, each brother reaching in with the seriousness of people selecting a mystery flavor chip. Zeus draws the sky, of course, he does. The universe has always liked a dramatic centerpiece. Poseidon gets the sea, which he seems pleased with, because he immediately flicks a drop of seawater into the air like a preview. And Hades, he draws the underworld. He doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, just gives a quiet nod, as though fate simply handed him the world's most challenging but strangely comforting home. You trudge beside him briefly, feeling the temperature shift slightly cooler in his presence. Not unpleasant, just subterranean. Zeus now turns to the task of shaping Olympus into a proper divine headquarters. You trudge up the marble steps forming under his command, each one smoothing itself out as if buffed by invisible hands. Soon, gleaming halls rise, shimmering with gold, silver, and clouds that seem to hold up the ceiling with fluffy determination. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind. Some ancient storytellers claimed the Olympian palace was self-cleaning, which means the gods were essentially the first to invent a cosmic Roomba. You can't confirm this, but the floors are spotless enough to see your reflection, a slightly confused traveler surrounded by newly minted gods. The Olympians begin to settle into their roles. Hera, Zeus' sister and, soon his wife, steps into the palace with a regal air, already mentally ordering new curtains and evaluating whether her husband can go 5 minutes without causing problems. Historians still argue whether Hera's stern personality was unfairly exaggerated by male poets, or whether her patience truly had a divine limit. You suspect both can be true, Demeter wanders the slopes below Olympus, tracing her fingers through fresh soil, coaxing the first wheat blades from the earth. Hestia tends to the hearth, creating a warm glow that spreads comfort across the mountain. Her flame flickers gently against your cheeks as you trudge past, giving you the cosmic equivalent of a cozy blanket. With power comes organization, or at least the Olympian version of it, which is 1 part teamwork, 2 parts sibling rivalry, and 3 parts dramatic flair. Zeus begins establishing order, seasons, winds, mountains, rivers, and which clouds are allowed to thunder without his permission. He even drafts a loose set of divine rules, which the other gods pretend to read while making mental notes about loopholes. A mainstream fact surfaces. The early Olympian court was imagined as a divine government, where each deity had a sphere of influence, representing forces of nature and human experience. You trudge through the shifting landscapes as the gods shape the world. Poseidon drives his trident into the ground, causing oceans to roar to life, waves forming like eager puppies bounding into existence. Hades returns to the shadows below, carving pathways through the underworld, forming rivers with names like Styx and Lethe. You catch a faint whisper from the river Lethe as you pass, offering forgetfulness like a soothing lullaby. But you politely decline. You still have many miles of myth to walk. A quirky debate echoes through mythic scholarship. Some fringe storytellers claim that when Zeus first built Olympus, he allowed the winds to audition for dramatic thunderstorm roles, with North Wind taking the job far too seriously. Completely unverified. Yet the way the breeze ruffles your hair here does feel a little theatrical. Olympus now gleams above the world, shining like a beacon of order, beauty, and occasional divine pettiness. You wander between its majestic columns, feeling the cool marble under your fingertips, the soft rumble of distant thunder hinting at Zeus's presence. Dining tables stretch endlessly, laden with ambrosia and nectar, though you know better than to touch those unless you want eternal life, with the side effect of chronic divine drama. As the gods settle into their new domains, the world below blooms with new possibilities. Plants sprout under Demeter's guidance. Rivers flow in patterns meant to last for millennia, and the seasons take their first hesitant steps. Historians still argue whether the Olympian order was meant to represent the triumph of civilization over chaos, or simply reflect the Greeks' love for structured storytelling. You trudge to the edge of Olympus one last time this section, gazing out at the vast world being molded into familiar forms. The Titans may be gone, but their echoes linger in the earth. And the Olympians, young, ambitious, and beautifully flawed, now ready to craft a new era. You drift onward now, still in that soft haze of late-night calm, and you find yourself easing into the stories of the ancient Greeks who walked the earth long before you. You move over the cracked stones of a sun-bleached square, where farmers, merchants, and gossip enthusiasts, basically ancient Twitter, gather to talk about the gods. You hear their voices blending like low waves, tales of Zeus throwing tantrums, Hera planning celestial revenge lists, and Poseidon shaking the earth anytime someone insults his seaweed. And right in the center of all this chatter stands an old storyteller with a beard so long he could honestly use it as a scarf. You slide closer, curious, because you can already tell he's about to talk about heroes, the kind you've seen in paintings, movies, memes, and maybe that one video game you rage quit after a boss fight. You settle down as he speaks of Aretitha, Greek idea of excellence, the standard heroes are supposed to live up to. It's funny, because the ancient Greeks expected perfection in everything, from sculpting marble abs to reciting poetry without sneezing mid-verse. They believed heroes weren't perfect, just striving. And that's something you feel as the night hums around you. Even now, you strive. Not for glory or immortality, but maybe for a decent night's sleep and fewer awkward morning meetings. The storyteller continues, saying you can almost hear his dusty voice that heroes are born from gods and mortals mixing, which honestly sounds like a divine version of complicated family drama. You think of how Zeus alone has enough demigod kids to qualify as the original absent father with a very full calendar. Historians still argue whether these myths were based on real warriors or if they were just exaggerated campfire tales. But the fact remains, the Greeks used these sagas to teach courage, caution, and the importance of double-checking who you're dating. Because you never know if someone's secretly a shape-shifting deity. As you listen, you can't help imagining that world bronze armor, gleaming, shields decorated with mythological fan art, sandals slapping dusty roads. You hear the clang of distant training grounds, where young warriors swing swords in the heat. There's an aroma of grilled olives drifting by, which doesn't sound tasty, but at least makes the scenery feel authentic. You can practically feel the swell of pride the Greeks had in heroism. One mainstream fact slips easily into your mind. Greek heroes weren't supposed to be moral role models. They were meant to be larger than life, dramatic, flawed, and powerful, like reality show contestants, but with more spears. The storyteller shifts, leaning on a crooked staff, and tells of Heracles, the poster child for muscles first. Thinking later, he laughs softly as he describes the 12 labors, which sound less like heroic trials and more like a cosmic chore list assigned by someone who really enjoyed paperwork. Your eyes relax as you picture Heracles wrangling the Nemean lion while maybe muttering under his breath about unionizing. Then he mentions a quirky tidbit. Some ancient Greeks genuinely believed Heracles invented wrestling by accident when he slipped on a rock and decided to turn it into a sport rather than admit embarrassment. You smile because, honestly, that sounds relatable. The night breeze brushes your cheek as Aretes, Theseus, Achilles, Atalanta, and Perseus float into the narrative like silhouettes across your half-dreaming mind. You follow Achilles to the training ground, where Chiron the centaur is lecturing him about honor, while probably wishing his student would chill out for once. You watch Theseus wander through Athens, casually ignoring the fact that every decision he makes has consequences on an entire city. You drift beside Atalanta in a forest of crisp leaves as she outruns every suitor alive. Proving for the 100th time that I am not interested is a perfectly valid boundary, even in myth. As you ease deeper into the flow, the narration folds you into an age when your value was measured by your deeds. Whether you slayed monsters, rescued cities, or returned home in one piece without irritating too many gods along the way. And the gods always got irritated. Sometimes for reasons so small that even Zeus would needed a celestial HR department to explain himself. You move through these stories as if walking inside a scroll believed to be true by countless ancient listeners. Children once fell asleep to these exact tales, though probably without the gentle sarcasm you're getting tonight. You picture a young Athenian lying under a clay lamp, eyes drooping as a parent whispers how heroes became stars in the sky. You can imagine that child wondering if they, too, could earn a place among constellations. A hazy warmth wraps around your shoulders as you follow tales carved on temple walls. Heroes grappling monsters that symbolize fear, chaos, and all the stress that piles up like unread email. You drift beside them, not to fight, but simply to observe, to let the rhythm slow your thoughts and soften your breath. And somewhere deep in the stories, you recognize that heroes weren't just powerful, they were profoundly human, restless, impulsive, searching for belonging, trying to balance destiny with personal choices. The same way you might argue with a GPS that insists on rerouting you through unnecessary detours. The Greeks taught their listeners that life is a quest, not for perfection, but for meaning and, maybe a bit of cosmic recognition if you didn't annoy Hera too much. Your senses sink deeper into tranquility as the storyteller's voice fades like a lantern dimming. You carry the echo of heroism with you, soft and steady, as you drift to the next part of this long, gentle journey. You feel the night shift gently as you move from the dusty training grounds of heroes into a calmer, almost scholarly glow. It's as though some quiet librarian of the cosmos has dimmed the lanterns just enough for you to peer into the origins of Zeus. Hera, Poseidon, and the entire family tree that somehow manages to be majestic, dysfunctional, and wildly entertaining all at once. You walk along a narrow path lined with broken columns, and with each step, the air fills with the low murmur of ancient prayers. This is where you watch the Olympian gods rise out of older stories, the Titans, the primordial forces, and all the cosmic drama that came before the glittering throne of Olympus was ever built. You ease into the memory of a world where there was no world, yet only chaos. Not the messy bedroom kind, but the vast, swirling potential of existence. Out of chaos came Gaia, the earth beneath your feet, and Uranus, the sky that stretches above you now, even in this dreamy darkness. You hear the soft crackle of their union forming mountains and oceans, like the universe warming up with a few experimental brushstrokes. A mainstream historical fact, nudges in ancient Greek cosmology, is one of the earliest recorded attempts to explain the universe using narrative rather than equations. You imagine a philosopher shrugging thousands of years later, whispering, "Look, it's symbolic," while everyone else nods like they totally understand. You drift closer to Gaia as she births the Titan's 12 giant forces, who are basically the prehistoric Avengers. But then Uranus decides he doesn't like his offspring crawling around the cosmos, so he pushes them back into Gaia's body. A terrible move, obviously, and you feel a soft wince, because even mythological mothers deserve personal space. Gaia recruits Cronus, a Titan with ambition issues, to overthrow his father. You watch the ambush unfold like a dramatic shadow play, and although the moment is heavy, the narration softens the edges. Historians still argue whether these creation myths reflect early agricultural shifts, generational power struggles, or just a community of storytellers who really liked adding plot twists. Cronus wins the cosmic battle and becomes ruler, but he also inherits paranoia, like it's a family heirloom. Fearing his children will overthrow him, he swallows them the moment they're born. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon down the hatch. You can't help imagining the world's most unsettling parenting technique. Somewhere between strict upbringing and absolutely not recommended. Yet the vocals stay calm in your ear, smoothing the roughness as you follow Rhea, the weary mother, sneaking away with her youngest child. She replaces the baby with a stone wrapped in cloth, which Cronus swallows without checking, proving that even Titans sometimes operate on autopilot. You drift with the hidden infant Zeus to the cave on Crete, where he grows up supported by nymphs, bees, and a goat named Amaltheor, quirky tidbit of the night. Some versions claim the goat accidentally headbutted Zeus so hard that lightning was invented. It's not peer-reviewed science, but you have to admit, it's memorable. You watch Zeus rise to adulthood with a kind of confidence only someone raised by magical babysitters could have. When the moment feels right, he frees his siblings, who emerge from Cronus's stomach, probably grateful and confused in equal measure. You glide alongside as gods and titans clash across a mythic landscape. Mountains tremble, oceans toss themselves in fury, and firestorms streak across a sky that seems almost too vast. Even though it's a war of cosmic scale, it doesn't overwhelm you. The tone stays slow, steady, meant to cradle your thoughts, not jolt them. The Olympians win, and suddenly you're ascending a misty path toward the newly claimed summit of Mount Olympus. You feel the air thin, but in a pleasant way, a coolness that settles on your skin like silk. Columns gleam, clouds curl at your feet, and the gods begin arranging themselves into a pantheon. Zeus with his eagle, Hera with her peacock, Poseidon with his trident, Demeter with her wheat, Athena with her calm intelligence, Apollo and Artemis like twin flames of sun and moon. The whole scene feels like watching a divine family photo slowly crystallize. Yet even now, you sense the undertones of debate. Scholars still argue whether the Olympian gods were adopted from older Mycenaean deities, or whether the myths evolved independently through oral tradition. You picture one ancient historian throwing his papyrus onto a table in frustration, while muttering something timeless like, "We just don't have enough evidence." Your steps carry you through Olympus, quiet and unhurried. You see Hermes inventing mischief before breakfast, Hephaestus hammering sparks into existence, Aphrodite adjusting her hair as a flock of doves swirls around her. Stories about each god ripple through your mind like drifting smoke, Poseidon calming storms with a whisper, Hera sending gentle breezes to loyal couples and discreet lightning bolts to not-so-loyal ones, Demeter teaching humans the art of grain while searching eternal summers for her daughter. There's a peacefulness in walking among these impossible beings, not because they're perfect far from it, but because their stories feel textured, dramatic, and strangely human. Moments of jealousy, triumph, awkward romance, questionable decision-making. It all makes Olympus feel less like a holy fortress and more like a very powerful family group chat that occasionally wipes out entire islands. You continue along the clouded marble pathways, feeling your mind soften at the edges. Everything slows. The conversations of gods drift like warm drafts in a quiet room. Their power hums under the surface. But tonight, you're just an observer. A sleepy traveler listening to the stories of how the universe found its shape. And you ease forward, ready for where the myths lead you next. You drift deeper into the soft folds of the night, and the marble pathways of Olympus slowly blur into a glowing tapestry of stories being woven in the mortal world below. Your steps feel lighter, almost floaty, as though you're strolling downhill from a dream. And just ahead, the sacred mountainside melts into open hills, wild forests, and small villages where ordinary people whisper extraordinary tales about how the gods meddle in their everyday lives. You settle into this landscape, calm and unhurried, letting your breathing match the slow pulse of myth itself. Here is where you watch the gods operate, not as distant cosmic rulers, but as sometimes helpful, sometimes chaotic neighbors. You wander into a quiet meadow where a group of shepherds sit beneath a cypress tree, swapping stories about divine pranks. One says he once saw Hermes steal an entire herd of cows quietly, a feat that honestly feels like a masterclass in efficiency. Another swears Athena visited his dreams to remind him to sharpen his tools before harvest. You feel that warm shrug of ancient life when something unexplainable happened. It was simpler to blame a deity than accept random chance. In a world without Wi-Fi, you take what explanations you can get. A mainstream historical fact drifts into place, soft as moonlight. Greek religion wasn't about strict commandments or rigid scripture. It was lived, breathed, practiced in everyday gestures. Libations poured onto the ground. Olive branches hung on doorways. Prayers muttered before travel. You imagine someone whispering a tiny plea before crossing a rickety wooden bridge, hoping Poseidon's mood is stable today. For the record, it rarely was. You glide further into a village square, where offerings sit at the base of a simple stone altar. Bread, figs, a little winda kind of snacks you'd bring to a casual picnic. The atmosphere is serene, but you catch a quirky tidbit floating around. Some ancient Greeks genuinely believed that sneezing during a prayer meant that Zeus had personally approved your request. You imagine an ancient priest pausing mid-ritual like, "Ah yes, excellent omen," while the sneezer tries not to break eye contact. You move on, your path trailing into a quiet forest where dappled moonlight puddles at your feet. You sense Artemis here, goddess of the hunt, protector of wilderness, professional introvert. Her presence isn't loud, it's gentle, steady, like the rustle of a deer passing between trees. You imagine villagers leaving small tokens, carved wooden arrows, herbs, little clay figurines representing hopes for a safe hunt. Even in a mythic world full of chaos, there's something soothing about being under Artemis's protection. You feel it now, a subtle calm that wraps around your shoulders. Farther along, you come upon a river, so still it looks like a polished mirror. A soft splash guides your attention to the figure of a woman, Aphrodite, a nymph, or maybe one of those mythological beings who insists on bathing in public streams despite knowing full well that curious mortals exist. The scene reminds you gently that Greek myths often blended the divine and mundane so seamlessly that boundaries practically dissolve. Historians still argue whether these stories represent religious beliefs or cultural metaphors, or just ancient storytellers entertaining their audience between wine refills. You settle near the shoreline, watching the water ripple with stories about divine love that ranges from deeply romantic to absolutely questionable. Zeus transforms into animals. Poseidon appears in sea foam. Mortals get swept into relationships that definitely require a therapist. And somewhere in the distance, Hera is sharpening her emotional revenge toolkit. Yet even these complicated tales feel softened tonight, wrapped in the haze of your slowing pulse. The drama exists, but it no longer tugs at your nerves. It drifts like smoke in lantern light. Your steps carry you toward a small sanctuary nestled between olive trees. Inside, the air is thick with incense, the overwhelming kind, but the faint sweetness of worn rituals and quiet devotion. You watch as a priestess lights a small flame to honor Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Her calm presence fills the room like a warm blanket. You feel the simplicity of her worship. She's the protector of home, of stillness, of safe return. And in this moment, she feels like the goddess of sleep-friendly storytelling too. You wander onward, guided by the soft glow of fireflies, and come across a group of travelers gathered around a campfire. They're telling stories of how gods disguise themselves as ordinary humans. One traveler claims he once shared wine with an old man on the road, only to discover later it might have been Zeus himself, doing a casual undercover inspection. You smile at the thought. It's like the divine version of a restaurant critic showing up unannounced, except with thunderbolts. The travelers also mention hospitality, the sacred Greek value called xenia. Welcoming strangers wasn't just polite, it was mandatory. After all, mistreating a guest could mean you'd unknowingly offended a god. A fact floats gently your way. Entire myth cycles revolve around this rule, including tales where people who broke hospitality laws found themselves turned into animals, trees, or very moralizing, cautionary tales. You feel the world easing, softening, settling. The gods are no longer battling titans or shaping the cosmos. Here, among mortals, they are symbols, companions, explanations for wonder, fear, love, and fate. You walk through this slice of ancient life like a visitor who doesn't need to intervene, just observe, breathe, and drift with the gentle cadence of myth meeting daily life. And as you move forward, the stories await you, bigger, deeper, stranger, but always cradling you toward sleep. You move onward into a softer darkness now, the kind that feels plush and velvety, like you're walking through the lining of a very expensive dream. The trials of heroes and gods fade gently behind you, and the path ahead widens into a much larger, more atmospheric landscape, one woven with destiny, prophecy, and those deep cosmic forces the Greeks loved to imagine steering the universe from behind an elegant curtain. This is where you step into the realm of fate, the fates, and all the threads that tie every story together. The world around you quiets so completely that even your footsteps sound like part of the night's breathing. You wander into a clearing where three figures sit at a low table, illuminated by a soft, silvery glow. Their presence is serene rather than intimidating. These are the Moirai, the fates who spin, measure, and cut the threads of every life. But tonight, you see them working slowly, with long pauses and gentle motions. Clotho spins the thread, her spindle turning like a lullaby. Lachesis measures it with care, her fingertips grazing the length like someone smoothing fresh linen. And Atropos holds her tiny shears, not poised to snip anything urgently, but resting on her lap like a reminder that all stories end eventually, just not right now. You sense their rhythm more than their forms. Their movements feel like the tide, predictable and soothing. A mainstream historical fact glides toward you. The fates appear in some of the oldest Greek texts, even predating many Olympian stories, suggesting they were once independent deities absorbed into later mythology. Old, old gods, yet their presence here feels comforting, not ancient. You walk past them with their silent blessing, stepping into a landscape that shifts like a well-worn tapestry, turning in a breeze. The ground becomes a woven pattern beneath your feet, threads of gold, silver, deep green representing choices, accidents, luck, heartbreak, joy. You feel your path firm but flexible, as though destiny itself lets you wander as long as you don't stray too far from the pattern. It's peaceful here, soft. You're almost tempted to lie down and let the threads rock you like a hammock. But the stories call you forward. You enter a dim hall where the air carries the scent of ink and ancient parchment. This is where philosophers argued about fate versus free will, probably while drinking watered-down wine and pretending they were not slightly confused. Historians still argue whether the Greeks believed fate was absolute, or whether clever heroes could wiggle their way out of it with enough persistence and, maybe, a disguise or two. Tonight, the debate reads more like a soothing hum, the philosophical equivalent of rain tapping on a roof. A quirky tidbit drifts your way here. Some ancient Greeks believed that sneezing during decision-making wasn't just a sign from Zeus, it was a sign from the fates themselves, as if they were giving a tiny, cosmic thumbs-up. You imagine someone sneezing at the exact moment they choose whether to plant barley or wheat and confidently going, well, that settles it. You step deeper into the hall, where stories hang in the air like gentle constellations. You see Oedipus walking unknowingly toward a destiny sketched long before he was born. But instead of focusing on the tragedy, the night softens the tale into a quiet lesson about how even the best intentions can wander into complicated territory. You drift past Achilles, whose fate was sealed from birth, his life like a bright flame destined to burn fast. Yet here, in the dark, the flame is calm, steady, not rushing anywhere. You continue through a corridor where whispered prophecies echo without urgency. The voice of Cassandra threads through the space, her sight sharp, her warnings doomed to be ignored. Tonight, though, you feel none of her despair. It's as if the night itself finally believes her, offering her a moment of quiet validation after centuries of being misunderstood. There's something soothing in that, like overdue cosmic closure. As you walk on, the hall melts into a gentle slope leading toward a distant river. Its surface glimmers with reflected starlight, and you notice thin strands drifting above it, threads of fate lifting into the sky like fireflies with purpose. The river's current hums softly, and with it comes another fact. Many Greek myths suggest destiny is a rigid script, but more like a river, strong in its flow, yet capable of branching, slowing, or looping, depending on choices. Down by the water's edge, you see an elderly man sitting cross-legged, tracing shapes in the sand. It's Tiresias, the blind prophet, who somehow sees more clearly than anyone with perfect eyesight. His prophecies ripple across the river, but here they feel mild, like guidance rather than threats. You sense ancient wisdom drifting toward you. The future is a conversation, not a command. Tiresias's presence is calm enough that you almost sit beside him, letting the flow of time wash over you. You rise again as the riverbank leads you into a twilight orchard where apples gleam on trees that seem older than language. This is where the Hesperides once guarded golden fruit tied to prophecies and divine promises. You reach out but feel the faint push of a warm breezer, reminder that some destinies are protected, sealed away for the right moment. A gentle barrier, not a hostile one. You wander through the orchard, and the idea of fate shifts again. Threads become branches, branches become choices become paths. You sense the Greeks weren't afraid of destiny. They saw it as part of the world's fabric, something to understand, negotiate with, or occasionally outsmart. As you walk out of the orchard, you feel the entire landscape of destiny settling behind you like a soft blanket. The night deepens, but now it feels layered with meaning rather than mystery. You've watched cosmic weavers, ignored seers, cursed kings, doomed warriors, and the countless tiny signs mortals once believed guided their steps. Your own path glows gently ahead, inviting you further into myth. As if the story itself is pleased you've come this far. You ease forward now, letting the murmurs of campfires and soft prayers fade as the path beneath your feet grows older, rougher, shaped by the footsteps of countless dreamers who once walked these stories before you. The air shifts, becoming heavier, but not in a frightening way, just denser with meaning, as though you're entering a place where ancient lessons were carved into the very earth. And slowly, you find yourself drifting into the realm of trials, the moral and mystical tests the gods used to shape, challenge, and sometimes torment humankind. The night is quiet here, so quiet you can hear your own breath blending with the faint echo of a centuries-old proverb. The gods give mortals challenges, not out of cruelty, but out of entertainment, mostly. You let a small, sleepy smile curl at the edge of your mind. Your first step brings you to a rocky hillside, where a lone figure struggles upward, pushing a massive boulder that glints under moonlight. You don't need to ask his name. This is Sisyphus' poster child, for I made one bad decision, and now my life is a group project with no end. You watch him push the stone with grim determination, only for it to slip from his hands and roll back down the slope. You wait, thinking maybe the gods will cut him a break, but no, up he goes again, like someone stuck in a never-ending Monday. You feel sympathy, not fear. The rhythm of his struggle is oddly calming in the soft night. A mainstream historical fact floats by. Greek philosophers later used Sisyphus as a symbol for the human condition afoot, without guaranteed reward. A lesson, but also a lullaby in its own way. You continue on, and the landscape changes into a silent, shimmering field where tall grasses whisper secrets of another eternal punishment. There stands Tantalus, reaching for fruit that always lifts away and water that drains before he can drink. You picture him sighing with the kind of exhaustion you get when vending machines swallow your money. Your quirky tidbit arrives gently. Some ancient playwrights joked that Tantalus's punishment was proof that the gods had a surprisingly dark sense of humor. You nod, appreciating the cosmic commitment to a theme. But not all divine trials were punishments. Many were lessons hidden inside riddles, tasks, or moments of transformation. You find yourself stepping into a small clearing where a woman kneels beside a pond, gazing sadly at the ripples. This is Arachne, once a brilliant weaver whose talent made Athena herself raise an eyebrow. You watch the story unfold in shimmering images across the water, Arachne boasting, Athena arriving in disguise. The weaving contest that shows human skill can rival divine pride. When Arachne wins, Athena's reaction is dramatic. But the tone here remains soft, gentle, almost protective. You see the girl transforming into a spider, spinning endless webs with delicate patience. Historians still argue whether this myth teaches humility or celebrates human artistry. For now, it feels like a quiet reminder that creativity endures, even when forms change. You follow a breeze through olive trees and enter a place of prophecia, sanctuary, where the future glows like faint candlelight. The Oracle of Delphi sits in a haze of scented smoke, her murmurs echoing endless possibilities. Mortals come with questions they hope will solve their problem. But you watch them receive answers that sound like riddles written by a poet who loves ambiguity. You can't help but think the Oracle would thrived today as a cryptic, motivational speaker. The line between what's known and what's guessed blurs gently here. And in the quiet, you catch a fact drifting by. Even ancient city-states consulted the oracle before major decisions, whether to start wars, make alliances, or plant new crops. It's comforting, somehow everyone, no matter the century, wants reassurance before diving into the unknown. As you move on, a different kind of trial appears not for mortals, but for gods themselves. You see Apollo being punished to herd livestock after offending Zeus. Yes, even sun gods get timeouts. You see Hera hung from the sky in golden chains, not because of malice, but because divine family arguments escalate quickly. You watch Hephaestus limping away after being cast from Olympus as a baby, only to return later with gifts so brilliant the gods could barely look away. You realize trials sculpt everyone in myth, not just humans. Under the soft blue glow of twilight, you pass through a grove where Orpheus once descended into the underworld, armed only with music. His story drifts to you in a slow, melancholy rhythm. You watch him charm stones, trees, and the stern guardians of Hades with nothing but sound. It's strangely soothing, his courage wrapped in melody. But the moment he turns to soon losing Eurydice, forever passes, not with sharp tragedy, but with the gentleness of a shadow slipping behind a cloud. You feel the lesson without the sting. You step farther, and a tall figure rises from the gloom. Prometheus, bound to a rock. But tonight, the eagle is absent. It's just you, the quiet, and a titan who defied Zeus to bring fire to humanity. His chains shimmer as though woven from starlight rather than punishment. A quirky tidbit comes here. Some ancient villages believed tiny sparks that popped out of campfire were Prometheus winking at them. You like that image. Defiance softened into companionship. You continue, letting the terrain shift like a dream. Trials turn into transformations, transformations into warnings, warnings into wisdom. You see King Midas washing his golden curse away in a river that glitters faintly even now. You stroll past Narcissus, gazing at his own reflection, though tonight his expression is peaceful, not prideful. You walk by the shadow of Medusa, her story softened, her sorrow deeper than her curse. Greek myths didn't just entertain, they held a mirror to human fear, pride, love, stubbornness, hope, and you feel all of it settling around you in a warm, layered hush. Historians still argue whether these stories were meant as morality lessons or simply ways to explain life as weirdness. But for you, drifting through them now, they feel like slow-moving waves, steady, rhythmic, and soothing. You step forward, letting the trials fade behind you like distant lanterns. The night deepens, but the path ahead glows, ready for the next part of your journey. The night opens before you like a slow-moving curtain, revealing a quieter, more intimate chamber of the ancient world, one that lives somewhere between memory and imagination. You step into a landscape where myth and history begin to braid together like twin streams, each reflecting the other's shimmer. This is the realm of ritual, of the small actions that filled ancient Greek life with meaning long before heroes slayed monsters or cities rose and fell. You walk into a low courtyard, bathed in moonlight. The stones beneath your feet are warm, as if they still hold the echo of centuries of footsteps. A faint scent of burning herbs drifts through the air beneath. Sage, maybe a hint of rosemary. These are the quiet, domestic rituals that formed the backbone of Greek life, so often ignored in grand tales. But here, they glow softly, like lanterns guiding you deeper into the night. A gentle historical detail floats to you. Most Greek households kept a shrine to Hestia, goddess of the hearth, not for grand sacrifices, but for tiny, everyday offerings, a drop of wine, a piece of bread, a whispered hope. You can almost see it now, a small clay hearth with a dancing flame, tended not out of fear, but gratitude. The warmth of that flame spreads across the courtyard, making the shadows feel friendly, familiar. You wander toward a portico, where a group of women are weaving under lamplight. Their chatter is soft, rhythmic, less like conversation, and more like a lullaby shared across centuries. They're weaving peploi, ceremonial garments offered to Athena during festivals. Every thread they pull seems to hum with history. The stories they embroider, scenes of battles, gods, heroes look less like decoration tonight, and more like memories finding their way into fabric. A lighter, unexpected fact drifts in. During the Panathenaic festival, the enormous peplus offered to Athena was so large it was carried like a sail on a cart shaped like a ship. You picture it briefly, a giant cloth billowing across the city, like a parade float powered by pride and myth, and the mental image adds a gentle smile to the quiet night. As you continue, a narrow doorway leads you into a small temple lit by oil lamps. The quiet here is deep, but not heavy. There's a sensation that countless prayers have collected in the air, softened by time, into something warm and weightless. You sense the Greeks didn't fear their gods as much as they tried to bargain with them lightly, politely, like neighbors exchanging favors over the fence. On the temple floor sits a beautifully simple offering table. Fruit, bread, sprigs of herb, a carved figurine worn smooth from centuries of touch. You notice something small and charming, historically accurate in its peculiarity. Many ancient offerings were intentionally modest. People believed the gods appreciated sincerity more than extravagance. A humble loaf could speak louder than a golden cup. The idea feels soothing, even comforting, a reminder that meaning doesn't need grandeur. The temple opens onto a quiet hillside where a procession is forming, moving slowly under the full moon. Their torches glow like floating stars. But this is no dramatic parade. It's a peaceful, meditative walk, may be part of the Eleusinian mysteries, the most sacred rituals in the ancient Greek world. The mysteries promised participants some form of blessed afterlife, but their exact details remain unknown. Not because the rites were terrifying, but because people genuinely kept them secret. Believing silence preserved their power. As you follow the procession, the night shifts into something almost tender. The air feels thick with meaning, yet impossibly calm. You imagine ordinary citizens, participating farmers, mothers, travelers, each carrying their hopes like lanterns. Whatever happened in those rituals, historians agree it brought comfort, perhaps the reassurance that life and death were part of a gentle cycle rather than a sharp, frightening divide. The path leads you to a field glowing softly with moonlit dew. This is where remnants of old harvest rituals linger, songs once sung to Demeter, dances performed barefoot in the soil. You feel the earth beneath you as a warm, living presence. The Greeks understood something simple, yet profound. The ground that feeds you is something you must talk to, thank, and honor. The night seems to hum in agreement, as if echoing that ancient gratitude. A playful fact catches up to you here. During some festivals, people baked tiny cakes shaped like animals to offer instead of real sacrifices. A small kindness disguised as pastry. You picture a farmer offering a tiny cookie goat instead of a real goat and whispering, "I hope this is okay," and it makes the night feel even softer. You move onward to a small spring where water trickles lazily over smooth stones. Springs were sacred in Greece, often associated with nymphs who were believed to inhabit them, gentle spirits rather than dangerous beings. You sit for a moment by the water, listening to the soft, consistent music of the stream. It feels like a place where someone might once have come to ask for clarity, or healing, or simply a quiet moment away from the world. When you rise again, you feel as though you were re-moving through the everyday heartbeat of the ancient world. Rituals not dramatic or heroic, but deeply human. These were the gestures that made people feel connected to their families, their land, their gods, their place in the universe. You step back onto the path, and the night gathers all these small moments into something warm and comforting. The grand myths of heroes may have shaped Greece, but it was rituals like these humble offerings, whispered prayers, shared festivals that made the ancient world feel alive. The darkness ahead doesn't feel like mystery anymore. It feels like a home you've known once and are remembering slowly, step by gentle step. You step lightly into the sun-warmed streets of ancient Athens, the city buzzing quietly with the rhythm of everyday life. Though in the distance you can already sense the hum of destiny twisting through stone and shadow. The air smells faintly of olive oil and dust, a gentle mixture that carries both the ordinary and the extraordinary. And as you trudge along, you feel that familiar tingle that happens whenever myth seeps into reality. You about to walk the path of a hero, one who is as clever as he is daring, and whose story is full of twists, quite literally. This is Theseus, scion of Athens and son of King Aegeus, who, even before he's fully grown, has a destiny that refuses to sit politely on the sidelines. You watch him as a young man, strong and determined, deciding to leave home and seek his place in the wider world. The roads of Attica seem calm, but every mile whispers of challenges and family secrets. Historians still argue whether Theseus' exploits were entirely invented by Athenians to glorify their city-state, or if they were based on fragments of real heroic deeds. Either way, the stories are comforting in their rhythm, like slow waves lapping at a stone pier. Your first encounter is the famous labyrinth, built not just as a prison, but as a testament to human ingenuity and divine ambition. It sprawls like a living puzzle, constructed by Daedalus, whose hands crafted walls that twist and turn in impossible patterns. You can almost feel the smooth stones beneath your fingers, as if the labyrinth itself is breathing gently around you. The faint echo of footsteps from centuries past makes you realize that this isn't just a physical maze, it's a symbol of human ingenuity entangled with human error. The historical fact drifts past you like a lazy butterfly. Archaeologists have found hints that the myth of the labyrinth may reflect actual Minoan palace complexes on Crete, which were labyrinthine in their corridors and storerooms. It's the kind of detail that makes you grin softly, thinking that maybe a Bronze Age building gave birth to a monster story. And speaking of monsters, here comes the Minotaur, half man, half bull, confined to this twisting prison. You're not frightened. Rather, the creature appears as a slow, heavy presence, more tragic than terrifying. Its existence is tied to a curse and a story of human hubris, a reminder that myth often blends fear and empathy in equal measure. As you move through the shadowed corridors of this grand maze, the clever design of the labyrinth begins to unfold. Every wall, every turn, is a test not just for the body, but for the mind. Theseus carries a simple spool of thread, the infamous ball given to him by Ariadne, daughter of King Minos. You watch the thread unwind behind him, a delicate lifeline tracing the path of courage and cleverness. Without it, you would get lost, too tangled in your own thoughts and the infinite repetitions of corridor and shadow. A quirky tidbit. Some versions of the story claim Ariadne used a strand of her hair instead of thread, which makes you imagine Theseus holding a single golden lock like a very confusing map. The tension in the labyrinth is gentle, yet persistent. You see Theseus encountering the Minotaur in a quiet clearing, and there's no need for dramatic sword clashes. Tonight, the monster moves slowly, almost sadly. You feel the rhythm of the fight more than the danger, the clever trick, the decisive thrust, and the Minotaur collapses into silence. It's a soft, lulling triumph, a resolution that carries more relief than excitement. You think of it as the myth equivalent of finally finding the right path in a complicated dream maze. Historians still debate whether the Minotaur was symbolic of Minoan religious rites, a political allegory, or just a story to scare off kids from wandering too far. With the Minotaur subdued, you watch Theseus trace his way back using Ariadne's thread, the walls seeming to breathe gently around him. The path is quiet, almost meditative. You imagine the soft sounds of his footsteps, the faint creak of wooden doors, the distant drip of water echoing through cavernous corridors. Every turn is a reminder that bravery is not about recklessness, it's about preparation, intelligence, and the willingness to trust someone else's guidance. In a lullaby sort of way, the labyrinth teaches you that even monstrous challenges can be overcome if you keep your wits about you. But the story doesn't stop with clever escape. You wander with Theseus as he departs Crete, holding Ariadne close, only to confront the delicate sorrow of abandonment at Naxos, where Dionysus enters the scene. The night folds in around you, carrying the bittersweet scent of love, loss, and divine intervention. A quirky aside, some scholars argue that Ariadne's disappearance may have been a later addition to explain certain Athenian cult practices, which adds a layer of historical mystery beneath the myth. You smile to yourself, the night so soft that even heartbreak seems almost gentle. The journey back to Athens is no straight line. You sense the weight of parental expectations and human error hovering in the distance. Theseus forgets to change his sails from black to white, signaling his survival to King Aegeus. The result is tragedy. Aegeus leaps from a cliff into the sea, giving his name to the Aegean. You feel a somber hush, not a sharp sting, as the story settles over you. The lesson drifts by like a soft wind. Human oversight has consequences, even amidst heroism. And yet there is comfort in continuity, the myth-weaving, the triumphs and mistakes of humanity into a single, enduring narrative. You step beyond the cliffs and the imagined waves, and the cityscape of Athens stretches gently before you. Here are the institutions, the streets, and the hum of daily life fall, made more meaningful by the myths that circulate quietly beneath them. The story of Theseus reminds you that heroism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's clever, sometimes it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's a thread carefully followed back home. Historians still argue whether Theseus' legend was meant to glorify Athenian identity or simply entertain audiences with thrilling adventures. A final, comforting quirk. Some versions of the myth suggest the Minotaur's labyrinth was cleaned and maintained by magical servants, an ancient version of overnight janitors keeping the corridors in perfect condition. You chuckle softly, imagining tiny spirits dusting corridors with straw brooms, making the labyrinth suitable for heroics without tripping hazards. As you leave the shadowed path of the labyrinth behind, the night hums softly, carrying with it all the lessons of cleverness, courage, and gentle misfortune. The story of Theseus, hero, thinker, and occasional tragic son settles in your mind like a feather landing on a pillow. You feel ready for the next leg of your journey, wherever the myths may drift you. And yet you are lulled into a calm reverie by the knowledge that even in a maze, there is always a path home. You drift now into a quieter, softer part of Olympus, where the night air feels scented with ambrosia and faint whispers of wine. Here, gods walk not as distant figures of awe, but as beings prone to very human, urges love, jealousy, curiosity, and the occasional petty mischief. You wander alongside them, your footsteps muffled by clouds that feel as soft as a thick blanket, and you notice that even immortals don't escape the tangle of emotions. The stars above glitter faintly, like giggling witnesses to divine drama, and you realize that tonight you are a spectator to the gods' most tangled affairs. Your attention first rests on Zeus, whose romantic ventures are as numerous as the constellations themselves. He moves smoothly, effortlessly, charming mortals and immortals alike, a mischievous grin hiding beneath the weight of thunderbolts. You watch him transform into a swan once, a bull another time, even a golden shower at one particularly questionable moment, all to pursue his desires. You probably won't survive trying to keep track of every disguise, and the gods seem to delight in your confusion. Historians still argue whether these myths were meant as moral warnings, political allegory, or just exaggerated entertainment for parties and storytellers. Hera, ever vigilant, follows with a watchful eye, her patience stretching thinner than the veil of clouds over Olympus. You notice subtle flashes of her jealous power, a storm brewing where Zeus passes, a sudden quiver of lightning when a mortal catches his attention. The drama is almost playful, more akin to watching a cat patiently plotting against a cheeky mouse than observing apocalyptic wrath. A quirky tidbit floats past you. Ancient poets described Hera secretly whispering into the ears of unsuspecting women to stir domestic quarrels, like a cosmic gossip columnist. You smirk as you picture it, the gods' private lives strangely mirroring your own human headaches. Moving quietly through this soft chaos, you encounter Aphrodite, radiant and impossibly graceful. She glides across the clouds, her laughter light, contagious. She manipulates hearts with the gentlest of nudges, arranging affairs that entwine gods and mortals alike. You realize that love here is as dangerous as any war, and just as intricate. She touches hearts subtly, like a painter adding delicate strokes to a sprawling canvas. The historical fact hums faintly in the background. Greek myths often used love affairs as a framework to explain natural events, alliances, and the moral order of the world. Nearby, Ares strolls in, looking equally bored and mischievous, flexing his muscles and provoking mild conflict where none is needed. You feel a thrill as he crosses paths with Aphrodite. Tension flickers like tiny sparks in the night. Their famous affair is not just lust, it's emblematic of the chaotic power of desire, which no god or mortal can fully control. The night softens the story, turning potential calamity into a gentle hum of cosmic irony. Scholars still argue whether these love stories reflect real Athenian social norms, or if they are simply imaginative metaphors for political alliances and rivalries. You drift past Hermes, the trickster, who slips quietly between couples and whispers false rumors, nudging affairs along with a barely noticeable grin. Even in the quiet night, his presence is playful but purposeful, a reminder that communication, truthful or misleading, can stir the tides of love and mischief alike. A quirky anecdote reaches you. Hermes once supposedly convinced a jealous goddess that a sleeping mortal had eyes for her, when in reality he was merely teasing both parties for sport. The thought makes you giggle softly, the clouds absorbing your laughter like a gentle pillow. The romantic web stretches further. Dionysus sips wine beside a small grove, encouraging flirtations that ripple like gentle waves across both Olympus and the mortal world. Mortals are drawn into divine schemes in subtle ways, sometimes falling in love without realizing that God's hand nudged them. You wander through the subtle glow of night, sensing the soft orchestration of passion and envy, feeling almost lulled by the regularity of these divine caprices. The line between mischief and fate blurs softly, almost as if you are hearing the gods' lullaby of love and chaos. You come across a minor quarrel between Artemis and Apollo, twin siblings whose harmony sometimes frays under the weight of mortal adoration and divine favor. Their argument is mild, more like teasing banter than conflict, yet it carries a lesson. Even perfection has cracks. Their lives, though immortal, are not free of petty jealousy or desire for recognition. A light, amusing fact drifts past. Some ancient tales describe gods holding secret contests of beauty, strength, and wit simply to stir amusement among themselves. You smile softly, imagining Zeus and Apollo competing in a cosmic karaoke contest for fun. As you float further, the threads of these romances and entanglements begin to tangle. Mortals, demigods, and immortals alike are caught in a web of attraction, rivalry, and divine meddling. The events of love, jealousy, and playful deceit unfold like a slow, rhythmic dance, each story connected by invisible strings. Historians still debate whether these tales were intended as social commentary, moral lessons, or just imaginative storytelling meant to amuse listeners. You pause to observe a final, tender scene, Psyche and Eros, a mortal and a god, navigating trials of trust and devotion. It's intimate and quiet, the softest touch of love, surviving through patience and understanding. You notice that even in myth, the most delicate and enduring forces are not thunder or lightning, but quiet connection, empathy, and sometimes the ability to forgive mistakes. As the night stretches on, you realize that this section of Olympus is not chaotic in the terrifying sense, but in the soft, restless way of dreams. Divine hearts flutter, tangle, and unravel in quiet patterns that mirror your own, yet with an eternal, patient cadence. The stories are gentle, almost hypnotic, like a lullaby woven from desire, curiosity, and occasional cosmic pranks. Even as you step away from these clouds, the soft hum of romantic mischief follows you, a comforting undercurrent, reminding you that love messy, fleeting, eternal is one of the threads holding the universe together. You descend now into a cooler, darker world, the air thickening with quiet mystery as the edges of the mortal realm blur into something softer, heavier, and undeniably otherworldly. The ground beneath your feet becomes slightly damp, the faint echo of dripping water guiding your steps. You feel the gentle pull of shadows wrapping around you like a familiar blanket, and you realize you are approaching the domain of Hades, the Greek underworld. This is a place not meant to terrify you tonight, but to lull you gently, showing the rhythms and patterns of life and death, and the delicate way the Greeks imagined the journey beyond. You pass the river Styx, whose waters ripple with a faint, phosphorescent glow. Charon, the quiet ferryman, waits patiently, his boat rocking slowly in the current. You offer the customary coin, feeling the weight of custom and superstition, though the scene is serene rather than ominous. Historical fact: in ancient Greek society, a coin was often placed in the mouth of the deceased to pay Charon for safe passage, showing how mythology intertwined with burial practices. You notice the motion of the water. It's hypnotic, almost meditative, like a gentle heartbeat guiding you deeper into this soft, shadowed world. Across the Styx, the land opens into a sprawling plain, mist curling over dark hills like whispering clouds. The shades of the dead drift by slowly, each carrying the echo of their mortal life. You feel no fear here. The underworld is calm, almost sleepy. You recognize familiar figures like Sisyphus, endlessly rolling his boulder. But tonight, the scene is softened. The boulder moves more like a floating balloon in slow motion, its futility strangely peaceful. Scholars still argue whether tales of punishment in the underworld were meant to instill fear in mortals or to provide comfort through structure and predictability. As you wander further, you encounter the three judges of the dead: Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iolcus. Their robes flow silently, their gestures measured and gentle. They evaluate souls not with cruelty, but with a quiet sense of order. You watch as each shade is guided along the path most fitting for them, whether to the Elysian fields, the Asphodel meadows, or Tartarus. A quirky tidbit: some ancient poets describe the judges using a tally of virtues and misdeeds written in invisible ink, a mysterious system that only the dead could see. You imagine the gentle hum of cosmic bureaucracy, paperwork and all, keeping eternity calm and orderly. You wander next into the Elysian fields, where the softest light blankets rolling meadows. Shades here walk, talk, and play quietly, indulging in pleasures refined and modest. It is not a place of ecstatic drama, but of restful contentment, a gentle counterpoint to mortal struggles. The wind carries scents of olive blossoms and soft grasses, lulling you with a rhythm that almost mirrors your own breathing. You notice that heroes, poets, and favored mortals enjoy a soft immortality, hear an echo of the life they once lived. A gentle ripple leads you to Tartarus, the shadowy depths where some souls linger under divine orders. Even here, the night softens the usual terror. Punishments appear more like meditative exercises than agony, designed to teach lessons rather than inflict pain. You glimpse Tantalus, whose eternal thirst and hunger are muted, the water and fruit gently receding in slow motion, like a perpetual meditation. Historians still debate whether these depictions were intended as moral warnings or allegories for the natural consequences of human behavior. You pass through fields where rivers Metacharon, Cocytus, Phlegethon, and Letheach, carrying symbolic resonance. Letheus waters are particularly calm tonight, flowing slowly and quietly, their magic erasing memories of mortal life for those ready to rest. You feel a soft pull toward the water, the thought of forgetting as gentle as a nap, the world outside temporarily dissolving into quiet haze. In a shaded grove nearby, Persephone moves lightly among shadowed trees, her presence neither frightening nor forbidding. She tends to the souls of the underworld with subtle care, balancing her dual life as goddess of spring and queen of the dead. A quirky note: ancient myths claim that flowers bloom wherever she steps, even in the gloom, making her soft footsteps the most delicate rebellion against darkness. You feel the quiet reassurance of continuity and renewal, even in the stillest, darkest places. You notice shades telling stories to each other, whispers of mortal life forming soft narratives across time. Orpheus drifts by, a lyre in hand, coaxing gentle harmonies from the darkness. The music is subtle, hypnotic, a lullaby of reflection. You realize that the underworld is not only a resting place, but a mirror for life itself. The choices, loves, fears, and joys all echo here, waiting to be understood softly, without shock or rush. You pass statues and reliefs carved into black stone, each depicting gods and mortals entwined in delicate interplay. Hades, often feared in mortal imagination, moves quietly, unseen in the deepest shadows, more a custodian than a tyrant. Historians still argue whether his domain was intended as a place of terror or simply a natural reflection of the inevitability of death. The night soothes the debate, offering only the gentle rhythm of moving souls and drifting mist. You wander toward the far end, where subtle light filters in from a distant opening, perhaps the path back to the living world, or merely a reflection of your own thoughts. The underworld is vast and layered, yet the slow pace, soft textures, and rhythmic whispers of water, wind, and music render it not terrifying but deeply, gently mesmerizing. You feel a strange kinship with the spirits here, recognizing both the fragility and resilience of existence. A final, whimsical detail comes to you. In some myths, the shades occasionally play games of chance with dice carved from bone, creating tiny ripples of amusement in eternity. You smile softly at the thought, imagining a quiet, underworld poker night, the stakes nothing more than laughter and fleeting enjoyment. As you leave Hades' shadowed realm behind, the rivers, judges, and fields drift into memory like a slowly fading melody. The night feels heavier yet soothing, the mysteries of death rendered gentle and contemplative. You are ready now to step forward into the final realm of reflection, where the legacy of these myths quietly settles into the world you live in. You rise gently from the shadows of the underworld, the soft hum of Hades' rivers fading behind you, and step into a twilight that feels like a bridge between myth and memory. The air is lighter here, scented with olive groves, sea spray, and the faintest whiff of parchment from forgotten scrolls. This is the realm where stories settle, where the echoes of gods, heroes, monsters, and mortals weave themselves quietly into the fabric of culture, drifting through time like a slow, calm river. You realize that every tale you've walked through, tonight, every labyrinth, war, love affair, or prophecy is part of something far bigger, a web of stories that continues to breathe centuries later. Greek myths are not just entertainment, they are threads spun into art, language, theater, and philosophy. You notice sculpted marbles lining your path, Athena's wise eyes carved into stone, and painted vases showing Heracles' labors in muted ochres and deep blues. Each artifact hums softly, carrying the story forward, whispering that these myths were never meant to remain locked in books or told only in whispers. They were meant to shape thought, to teach courage, cleverness, humility, and even gentle mischief. Scholars still argue whether myths were designed as moral guides, religious instruction, or merely storytelling, and perhaps the answer is all three, folded together as neatly as a lullaby. You drift past theaters, where the ancient Greeks first performed tragedies and comedies. Soft echoes of choruses hum in your ears, and you can almost hear the gentle, measured footsteps of actors in sandals, speaking words meant to touch the soul and soothe the mind. The stories were tools for reflecting on life, love, and loss, a mirror held up to every human experience. Magnified, yet deeply relatable, a quirky tidbit. Some plays were performed only at night festivals, under torchlight, where shadows danced along the stone walls, making monsters and gods feel as real as the chill in the air. The language of myth floats around you like music epithets, poetic turns of phrase, and carefully chosen names. Athena's wisdom, Apollo's music, and Dionysus' revelry ripple through lexicons and poetry, embedding themselves in a way that still resonates. You notice the subtle echoes in words, the metaphors that survive the centuries, the small gestures in speech that connect modern life to these ancient imaginations. You feel the calm reassurance of continuity, even millennia later. Myths breathe quietly beneath our choices, influencing thought and culture without demanding attention. You walk along a gallery of painters and writers, past the canvases where heroes strike bold poses, and through libraries where philosophers traced the contours of divine influence. You sense that the myths became more than stories. They became frameworks for understanding the world, ways to navigate human emotion, morality, and the mysterious forces beyond. Even mathematics, astronomy, and medicine in ancient Greece were colored by mythic imagination, and you feel a gentle shiver, realizing how pervasive these ideas were. Historians still argue about the exact influence of Greek mythology on science and philosophy. And tonight, the debate hums like a soft undertone beneath the stories themselves. In a quiet courtyard, you see children playing among statues of gods and heroes, their laughter soft as if they are the present-day echoes of ancient audiences. It strikes you that myths endure not only because of their drama, but because they are endlessly adaptable, able to be whispered, read, or performed, each generation shaping them subtly while retaining the core rhythm. A quirky aside, some myths evolved purely from misheard names or playful exaggeration, reminding you that even great stories can begin from small, almost accidental sparks. You feel the stories of the underworld, the labyrinths, the battles, and the loves fold into a gentle spiral around you. They are no longer threats, challenges, or obstacles. They are companion, quiet reminders of human ingenuity, frailty, and the enduring curiosity that drives mortals and immortals alike. Every hero's stumble, every god's folly, every mortal's choice now seems like a slow, comforting lull, coaxing you forward with soft, measured inevitability. The path widens to a calm ocean horizon, and you realize that these myths, once living in temples, scrolls, and spoken word, now drift into the subtle consciousness of humanity. The Iliad and Odyssey ripple in epic cycles through art, literature, and even casual conversation, leaving traces in your own thoughts tonight. You feel that same gentle curiosity that guided Odysseus, the cleverness of Theseus, the daring of Heracles, and the whimsical charm of the gods themselves, all quiet, unseen, shaping culture like soft currents beneath the surface. And as you settle into this final stretch of the journey, you feel the night around you slow to a soothing tempo. The world of myths, once chaotic and tangled, now lies calm, orderly, and almost protective. Every lesson, every tale, every strange and wonderful detail from Greek mythology settles into the night like a feather on a pillow, reassuring, gentle, and hypnotic. You linger a moment, noticing the faint whispers of centuries past, the distant laughter of gods, and the quiet footsteps of heroes long gone. You feel the weight of time, but not heavily, more like a soft, warm blanket draped carefully over your shoulders. Every story has a rhythm, every tale a gentle cadence, and tonight, that rhythm lulls you softly, reminding you that human imagination can stretch across millennia, gently shaping thought and culture, always waiting for new ears to listen. Finally, the glow of the horizon softens further. You take a deep, quiet breath, and the echoes of Olympus, Crete, Troy, and the underworld fade into a tender, whispering hum. The myths, the heroes, the gods, the monsters, and the mortals drift away like a slow, calming tide. You feel the quiet reassurance of their legacy as a warm presence beside you, a subtle melody that persists in the hush of the night. The night has stretched long and gentle, carrying you through chaos, courage, and curiosity, and now it softens completely. The echoes of gods, heroes, mortals, and monsters settle quietly, like leaves drifting to rest in a calm river. Every tale you've encountered tonight, from the primal chaos that birthed the cosmos, through labyrinths, wars, love affairs, and the quiet depth of the underworld, now rests in the same gentle space, untangled, softened, and hushed. You breathe slowly, feeling the rhythm of time itself mirrored in your chest. The stars above flicker faintly, distant yet steady, reminding you that even stories millennia old can still guide thought, curiosity, and imagination. Your mind wanders through olive groves, quiet palaces, and shadowed rivers, each detail settling like warm sand between your fingers. The struggles, mischiefs, and triumphs of mortals and immortals alike feel distant but comforting, as if you've walked beside them, learned their secrets, and returned unharmed. Soft wind carries scents of blossoms and parchment, blending memory and imagination into a lullaby. You feel the gentle reassurance that myths are more than entertainment. They are companions, quiet reminders of courage, cleverness, empathy, and curiosity, carrying messages that endure quietly, persistently, softly. Their lessons drift through your thoughts, not as commands or warnings, but as gentle nudges, coaxing reflection and calm. The night deepens, and every image begins to fade into a slow, tender darkness. The rivers, the labyrinth, the stars, and the gods all soften into shadows, leaving only the hushed, rhythmic pulse of your own breathing. You are surrounded by calm, by the soft echo of stories, and by the gentle continuity of human imagination. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let yourself drift slowly, securely, and gently into sleep. Sweet dreams.